Alrighty. I'm not ready to get into this one. How do I start this? Have you ever wanted to kill your girlfriend? Or your boyfriend? Or the person you love most in general? I pray that no one unironically heard that sentence and went, oh hell yeah I have! Because if so, you need to click off this video and immediately head to the nearest police station. Turn yourself in. It's not worth it. If the answer is no, then great. You're most likely a normal freaking person. You're also probably confused as hell, wondering why I would ask that question. Well, it's because it is closely related to the manga I'm reviewing today. The manga in question is titled Konya wa Suki ga Kirii desu ga Toriazu Shine, which translates to I love you so I kill you, the moon is beautiful tonight but first die, or can you just die my darling? I'm not gonna say which one is the correct translation or anything, but I'ma just call it by can you just die my darling, since it's the one I saw on the site I was reading it on and it's the easiest title for me to remember. Now before we get into this review, I will say one thing. This is not like my other reviews thus far where all I do is praise the crap out of the manga. I made sure to go out of my way to find a manga that wasn't an average rating of 7 or higher on Mal. And I know Mal isn't the say-all be-all of manga ratings, as there's a lot of voting manipulation among Metal Alchemist fans. But for not so popular manga, I think you can get a relatively trustworthy score. Also, the story has 2 parts, the first part being Konya wa Suki ga Kirii desu ga Toriazu Shine, 35 chapters long, and the second part being Konya wa Suki ga Kirii desu ga Toriazu Shine Last, which is only 22 chapters long, making for a total of 57 chapters. Also, ignore how badly I pronounce the Japanese name. I didn't even practice that, man. Just give me some props for at least attempting it. The first part is rated a 6.80 on Mal, and the second part isn't that much higher at a 6.89 average rating. I'll tell you guys towards the end of the video whether these are reliable ratings or not, and that's really all I got for an intro. But before we get into the actual video, let me ask you one simple question. Are you subscribed? No. Are you insane? Are you dumb? Are you smart? Well, no matter what you are, I'm trying to hit 2K subs sometime in the near future, so I'll brother out and subscribe. Now let's get into this review. Can You Just Die My Darling follows the main character, Taku Kamishiro, a dude who isn't exactly the manliest man ever, and he's a bit of a clean freak. And our boy is in love with Hanasono Mika, his childhood friend who is always protecting him and bullying him. It's also pretty obvious that Hanasono likes him too, but she's just waiting for him to stop being a coward and admit he likes her already, as it seems he keeps on making excuses when he's meant to confess. The thing about Hanasono that does play a pretty big part later in the manga is that a lot of people at the school like her. She's that girl. She's that bitch. She is, you know, everyone loves her. And due to that, Kamishiro knows he has to confess as soon as possible. One day whilst Kamishiro is at home, he witnesses a couple arguing outside. He ends up trying to defuse the situation when the man yells, "Don't come any closer." And when Kamishiro tries to respond, he yells, "No, I'm saying this for you. You might get infected as well." So what seemed to be a classic case of Chris Brown domestic abuse turned out to be a man who claimed to be infected with emotions. And he lunged towards Kamishiro. Funny enough, Kamishiro woke up the next morning, not remembering anything after that. And whilst walking to school, Hanazono pushes him from behind and starts talking to him. It was just like any other day. But that's when it happened. Kamishiro shoved his umbrella across Hanazono's throat. Or did he? It turned out to be more of a vision, showing what he could do, which surprised Kamishiro, as, you know, most people don't imagine stuff like killing the one that they love. Kamishiro describes it in his own words as an uncontrollable killing intent towards Hanazono. The killing intent, which is also referred to as ID, when in effect grants him many abilities like increased strength, speed, and pretty much a base shotting gun, at the cost of possibly going out of control and not only killing the one you love, but bystanders as well. As you can tell, Kamishiro ended up getting the disease, the infection that the guy had from earlier in the manga, and it's a pretty big disease that's everywhere in this manga, and it's a pretty bad thing. Kamishiro throughout the manga learns to control this bloodlust towards Hanazono, as pretty much everyone else who is infected eventually succumbs to their ID and does horrible things. The first 10 chapters take place at the school and is closer to a gore manga that is borderline cringe at times, as well as overly edgy, but it had enough non-cringe stuff about it to keep me interested. So the first 10 chapters, or half mid, half great. After the 10 chapter mark though, the story shifts closer to a pretty cool battle shonen manga with darker signing elements where Kamishiro joins a group called Rudiment, made up of members whose goal is to conquer their own bloodlust. They also task themselves with protecting the infected. Now with every good guy squad, you need a bad guy squad. In this story's opposing squad is CID, an organization that pretty much is the opposite of Rudiment. Even with the main squad, all fighting without IDs. I totally forgot to mention, the reason Kamishiro joins the group is because Hanazono is missing at this point of the manga, and he's convinced that if he joins Rudiment, he'll eventually be able to find her. Sorry, this explanation's all over the place, but I'm trying. So to wrap up the premise, Can You Just Die, Darling is a story about tragedy at the end of the day. If there was a comparison I had to make, I would compare it to something like Tokyo Ghoul at surface level, like the main character suffering from a sort of body defect that makes them want to kill innocents against their will, or the fact that you know from the start that the story will most likely end in tragedy. Calling it a knockoff wouldn't be right though, because it still has a lot of unique elements to itself. But yeah, despite me not being super in love with this story in the beginning, besides the infection stuff keeping me really reeled in, later on I got super into it and wanted to know how it all ends for not only the world, but the characters in the world. The story gets pretty crazy later on is what I'm trying to say, especially in the second part. Now it's time to specifically talk about some important aspects of the story. First, let's just start off with the plot. / the premise. This story has a unique plot that I really haven't seen anywhere before. Very interesting, and it hooked me from the start. Not much else to say about that, so let's move on to the art. The art is one of the better aspects of this manga. Not only is it pleasing in terms of the fight scenes, but it also does a great job at portraying the characters' emotions to the reader, which is sadly mostly expressions of anguish and despair. But don't worry, there are some smiles. Also, the character designs. A+++. Freaking beautiful, man. And speaking of characters, let's talk about it. The characters are pretty well made for the most part. They're all interesting, and I wanted to learn more about them while reading. I'm gonna just mention some faves as the story has a lot of characters, so I'm not even gonna attempt to go through all the important ones. Let's start off with the main character, Taku Kamishiro. He's kind of basic, but I like him. I like him a lot. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know why I like him a lot, but I do. Maybe it's for similar reasons that I like Kaneki. I hate to mention Tokyo Ghoul again, but it's my favorite manga, and if something has similarities, I'm gonna take notice. But the main character kind of pulls a Kaneki minus the multiple personalities, where he starts off as, you know, kind of not the manliest man and ends up being a way more serious person who knows that they must protect later on. And I like him a lot in the story. Next, we got Nebu. I think that's how you pronounce it. Nebu, maybe? The leader of the group Kamishiro is a part of, and overall a GOAT. His powers are really dope, and I just like him. You're gonna hear me say that a lot, but I don't know really how to explain it. Next, we got Hanazono, the main girl, who I didn't find super interesting at first. I found her really basic, but the good thing is that she dramatically improves during the second half of the story, and I've come to like her a lot. And overall, she's pretty wholesome. Oh, don't even get me started on Yuna Hayashi. Easily a top 3 character of this manga, and quite possibly the best written. She's batshit crazy though, and feels no emotions, so even though she has a cute face, don't try to approach her, please, for your own sake. I definitely miss some other favorites of mine, but it's past midnight and I've been writing this script for the last few hours, whilst already tired. I literally just finished this manga earlier today. I started it the other day thinking I could quickly read through it, get the video out by Sunday, because it's only 60 chapters. But these are some long-ass chapters, man. So this video is gonna be out a day late, and I'm recording it super late at night already. I don't know, man. Let's just move on to character development. The character development in this manga can be either very, very good, very, very confusing, or just flat out non-existent. For example, one of the major villains in part 1, this guy, is literally just there. He comes out of nowhere, doesn't get any better. You learn almost nothing about him besides like 2 panels that attempts to show development through backstory, but ultimately fails and leaves you questioning why he was there in the first place, besides plot convenience. But you also get characters like Hanazono that, like I said, drastically improves throughout the story. And you also get characters whose motives don't make sense to their characters at times. But at least there's characters like Taku who are pretty good the entire story, and Hayashi, who is super well written the entire story. I'm gonna just say that overall the character development is somewhat all over the place, but I would say it's more good than bad development. Pacing. The pacing actually isn't that bad. It never feels like it's dragging on in my opinion, but it also never feels rushed. No complaints here. Next we got the writing. The writing is kind of hand in hand with the development, plot, and pacing, and all in all, I would say the writing is above average. It reeks of crazy potential and has some really peak moments, but also suffers from not so great author choices for the story at times. Keep in mind, this is all my opinion. I'm not trying to diss the author or anything, just saying from my perspective. But it was also well written enough to keep me reading for about 60 monthly sized chapters, all the way up until the end. So I would say the author did well. So props. I'm gonna do an ultra Chad gangster gamer move and add a new category to these reviews. The best girl category. Or best waifu, depending on whether I see the girl that way or not. And in my opinion, Ryoko Eto, I hope that's how you say it, is the best girl in this manga. She's a part of the Rudiment team that Kamishiro joins, and they fight against the CID and other threats together. She also starts to fall for him just a tad bit. Later on, her arc takes a bit of a twisted turn, and it's pretty wacky, but overall, I think she's got the best waifu design for me, and I really just like her more than the other girls. Also, best boy would either be Kamishiro or Nebu. I also really like Kawamura, this dude, as well. Okay, I'm gonna add 2 more categories. I know I've been adding a lot of categories, but I need to because this is the closest to a battle shonen I've ever reviewed, so I haven't even needed these categories till now. But first, fights. Although there is technically one power system per se in this manga, there are a lot of unique fighting styles, as your power is totally dependent on what your loved one praises about you. That's how these infections work. It can range from something as simple as Kamashiro's eyes, that Hanazono praised for being able to observe things that others wouldn't, turning into eyes that can perceive almost anything, practically an ocular jutsu at this point, to Kawamura, who got struck by lightning, and the one he loved told him that they liked how his hand looked due to it, giving him lightning powers. There are also non-ID related fighting styles slash powers, like this bitch who turns into a Street Fighter character with her combos during combat, or this man with his Dr. Octopus arms. But yeah, all of these interesting fighting styles mixed with more gore than most fighting manga make for some amazing fights, and I had a ton of fun reading them. Villains. In my opinion, every villain in this story falls flat except for Miss Hayashi, who some might not even consider a villain, but who am I kidding? She's totally a villain. Let me just give you a taste for some of the other villains. One of them tries to be the deep religious villain, but it falls really flat, and he also has a whole cult of people who doppelgang as him. Nope, not clones. All just normal people that are highly infatuated with him, to the point where they get plastic surgery to look exactly like them, I guess. There's also another villain who's got curly hair and kind of just as crazy for no good reason besides being over dramatic about everything. He's also really powerful and a great plot convenience at times, to put it bluntly. There is one villain who was very good though. They were behind the scenes and sprinkled into the story a bit until the big showdown, but then he also fell flat. But like I said, at least one of the villains is written really well, so that's good. Even though I have my issues with a lot of the villains, I don't think any of them were horrible villains besides the cult guy. They all had their purpose and for the most part had good enough writing to understand why they're in the story. I just think that the plot fails them writing-wise a bit, as they don't get enough spotlight to truly get any significant development. There are more hurdles for the main characters than characters themselves. There are also a lot of borderline villain characters in this manga due to Bloodlust being a bitch, but I won't get into those because that's more spoiler territory. But it's time to answer the question that's been on your mind for the last however many minutes this video has been. Is Konya wa Suki ga Kiri desu ga Toriazu shine and Konya wa Suki ga Kiri desu ga Toriazu shine last readable or laughable? Readable, but not for everyone. It's not for those who don't like gore or writing that isn't 100% neat and perfect. And I'm not saying it's like bad, it's just there are some plot holes and some things that don't make sense at times. But if you don't mind either of those things and are interested in the premise, I think you'll find a lot to enjoy while reading it. Now, do I agree with those Mal ratings I mentioned at the beginning? Yeah, for the most part. I think I'd rate the first part a 6 or 7, and part 2 would be a 7.5 or even 8 in my eyes, so that's my stance on it. I really hope at least one of you guys reads this because I feel it's underappreciated. Not necessarily underrated, but underappreciated. Just someone please read it. I still haven't found a manga bad enough to be called laughable. Guess I'm gonna browse my anime list and look for a manga with an average of 5 or under now. That's at least longer than 20 chapters, so it at least has a story. Long enough for it to be called bad and not because it's not long enough. And then I'm gonna check it out. I will find a manga to roast. That's my mission now. But yeah, that's really all I got. Please like the video if you enjoyed, and please subscribe. I need it. Like SpongeBob with water. I need it. I really hope you guys had a good time here today. And until next time, see you around, fellas. Peace.